Again, thank you so much for inviting me to speak here and present on transforming to an Agile PMO for your project management office community or practice. Very excited to be here and hope to make this the beginning of multiple webinars focused on transforming to an Agile PMO. My name is Sally Elatta. I am the president of Agile Transformation Incorporated. Our website's agiletraining.com, and this is pretty much all we do is help organizations transform top down to, and bottom up, of course, to an Agile organization, specifically to have high-performing teams. My background's pretty technical, so I was a software developer for several years, both on the .NET and the Java side, and I then moved over to the leadership and project management and process improvement side. I'm also the Agile expert for the learning and education community or practice and have a series there of transforming to Agile. So thanks so much again for having me, and we will get started. Before we really talk about what does it mean to be an Agile PMO and how do you transform, I really wanted you to just take a second and think. This is called a thinking workshop, right? Since we're not here in person and I can't engage you with actual Post-it notes, I want you to think about what are the top sources of waste, what are the top sources of inefficiencies that your organization has faced with delivering value from your portfolio of project initiatives. So as we're trying to execute on all these projects and get them done, what has caused us delays? What has caused us inefficiencies? Where do we think just wasteful money is being spent? Feel free to contribute some of these ideas through the chat box right now in terms of sources of waste. And the next slide basically covers a few of them. So, conflicting business priorities. Many times different departments and different business owners want different things, right? And we are trying to satisfy all of them. Over allocation and multitasking. We're going to focus a lot on that today because that's a very big thing that we're going to discuss in terms of you transforming to an Agile PMO is being able to limit this. But over allocation means that resources are working on way too many things at the same time. We're pushing projects against them. We're basically overstuffing our pipeline, and that's why we're not able to get a lot of work done. No ROI or value measurement or tracking. And a lot of these, by the way, are coming from real-world surveys that I've done and actual organizations that I've been at, where they really don't actually measure ROI. I mean, they use ROI and value to justify the project at the beginning when it's in the initiation stage and to get approval on the business case, but no one actually comes back to review the ROI and the value at the end. Delivery of customer needs too late. So a customer wants something, and we're going through this very long process to deliver it. By the time we deliver it, which is 8 months to 1 year to 2 years later, the customer's almost lost interest or the actual business value that they needed is still not there. Unproductive, wasteful meetings. And you're probably surprised, what does this have to do with portfolio planning? Well, as you all know, projects mean, team members are always in meetings together. We all know how many meetings you're normally in as a project manager or PMO professional, right? We're in meetings all day long. Having ineffective meetings with no effective facilitators that actually have a purpose. A lot of people think it's all about the agenda. It's not even about the agenda. Every meeting has to have a purpose and a deliverable. And having ineffective use of these meetings is actually very costly to an organization. No end-to-end process visibility means that across multiple teams are working on their own project, but no one's looking at the bigger picture to say, is this all fitting together? Is this all working the right way? Are we actually optimizing the whole picture, or are we just optimizing at the specific layer? And then overproduction, so getting a lot of features done that are probably not even going to be used. And this is a symptom of the traditional process is to have your customers do what I call an initial brain dump. Everything that you want on this project, just tell me everything that you need, put it on this document, and sign off on it. The brain dump problem basically results in this overproduction. You're getting a lot of work done that they actually really are not even going to use. They just did a brain dump at the beginning because that's what they were asked to do. Tactical focus, no time for process improvement has been a very popular finding and discovery while I'm coaching a lot of organizations, is that a lot of managers and even PMO offices and even executive levels are really getting more into the day-to-day tactical putting out fires as opposed to thinking about strategic growth, process improvement, doing things better, optimizing. Some of the other inefficiencies is teams working in silos, too many handoffs and red tape between them, lack of communication, collaboration, and trust between the various silos. So everyone's got their own area that they work in, and a lot of finger pointing sometimes. Lack of generalizing specialist, and what this means is that people become so specialized in a specific role that they're not able within a project to deliver value in other roles, even though sometimes they're capable of doing it. But we have a lot of rules around, nope, you're this type of an analyst, you can't do that other type of analysis. Or you are a front-end developer, nope, I don't want you to write any of the back-end code. And we've done that initially for a good reason, which is separate roles and responsibilities. But in some organizations, it's been pushed so far that people are very thinly sliced. They can only do one thing and one thing only, so we're highly matrixed as a result of that. Working on bad, missing, or changing requirements is a big source of waste because, of course, if the requirements are not well formatted and well understood and well organized to begin with and actually deliver value and prioritize, then everything else just builds on top of that. Firefighting, and we just talked about this, which is being very reactive, very tactical. Let's look for the problems and the issues during the testing phase. And the testing phase happens at the end of the project, as opposed to continuously and iteratively looking for problems and issues. And unnecessary heavy process and documentation. And I know I'm speaking to a lot of PMO professionals, and it's interesting because some of the evaluations that I've done, some processes are not there at all, so we don't have any processes for idea qualification, for example. Or some processes are way too heavy, and so too many people begin to find workarounds. So small and large daily project impediments are huge, and then of course disengaged employees and customers. These have been the top findings in terms of the biggest sources of organizational waste. So why are we talking about this? Well, what some of the challenges as you're moving an organization to being more agile, you are actually transforming them from siloed teams that are all the same color, and what I mean here by the same color is they all do the same thing. It's a group of business analysts. It's a group of specific customers in a specific area. This is the group of developers. This is the testing unit over here. Here's maybe the DBA unit right over here. So we've created our organization around these siloed teams that have all these thick processes to talk to each other. And what you're really trying to build when you move to Agile is stronger cross-functional teams. And so the team really is made up out of all of the roles that are necessary to hit a target or to get something done. So it's a completely different way of operating. You're probably familiar with it anyway because you're used to project teams where we do take teams from different roles and we say you're now going to be on a project. Well, think of Agile doing that, but even taking that to the next level, where we don't put people together and then break them apart after the project is done. We are trying to actually create stable business service teams that can deliver value and change the work that they work on. So as opposed to changing the teams around and the team members all the time, we are stabilizing the teams and then what we call changing their backlog of work. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. So that's your biggest challenge when you're transforming to an Agile-like organization, is the core of the organization becomes these cross-functional, stable service teams. So there's this game that I normally play in some of our workshops, and it's really interesting, and that's why I wanted to share it with you, even though I can't play it with all of you. And it's called the name multitasking game, right? Where, consider this individual right over here, the team. And this team has 4 customers that they have to satisfy that have different projects. And this team has been told to multitask and work on all 4 projects at the same time. So the first way that they did this, so 1, 2, 3, 4 over here represent the customer. The project is basically just write the name down. So I'm customer number 1, and I just want you to write Sarah. And I'm customer number 2, and I want you to write Carrie. And number 3 wants Jack, and Alex wants, number 4 wants Alex. The way we were doing this first multitasking is we had the team, with the rule that we set for them is no customer can wait. All customers need to be worked on all at the same time, which means every project needs to be in progress. And what happened in this exercise is we actually have a developer come up or someone representing the team, and we have the 4 customers come up and we say, okay, give me your requirement 1 letter at a time. But there's no order because we have to work on all of you at the same time. And so what happens is the customers begin to give you the letters. And when we're all said and done with this little quick workshop, and everyone, of course, is yelling, and no, I want an E, no, I want an A over here, no, please give me an A over here, give me an E. This was the total seconds that it took to finish the name game. So the first customer got done in 36 seconds, and as you can see, there was a lot of bugs and defects as we were going through this. The next one's 26, 17, and 30. But at least we had no customer waiting, and we were able to respond to all of them at the same time. The next version of this iteration was, let's try this with each customer in turn. So instead of having them all talk at the same time like this, and this is what we call the who screams the loudest syndrome for getting projects done, the customer who's most influential usually gets their project done faster. Well, let's just say, you're all equal in our eyes, and so we're just going to give everyone one turn, one letter at a time. So, customer 1, let's put an S for you. Customer 2, we'll do a K. Customer 3, we'll write a J. Customer 4, we'll write an A. Now we'll go back over here. We'll give you an A, an E, an A, an L, and so forth. So this is awesome, right? We're not having anyone wait. And so this is sort of the final the final verdict in terms of how long did it take to get their projects done. So 27, 29, 25, 26. It seems very fair. We were all late, but it's okay. We're all coming together at the same time. We still beat some of these late numbers on this side. So it seems like a very fair way to get projects done. Everyone gets a turn with the team. The last way we tried this is called one customer at a time based on priority. So based on value and priority, we just decided, you know what, Sarah, you are on the top of our list. You are the project that has the highest value for us to get done. Then it's Carrie, then it's Jack, and then it's Alex. And so think of this as what I call a vertical backlog now. We've started to create a vertical top-down ordered backlog as opposed to a horizontal, which means everything's being worked on at the same time. And so we started Sarah, we got her done, it took 6 seconds. Then we went to Carrie, got him done, it took a total of 12 seconds, but with that 6 second included. We wrote Jack, 17, Alex, 22. What is the point behind this game? What is the point behind this? This is actually a very powerful game. I play it with executives all the time. The point behind it is we actually don't get things done faster when we try to get them all done at the same time. As a matter of fact, when you're doing no one can wait and all projects have to be pushed down the pipeline, you get defects. Usually the team will respond and say, I was very stressed, I was multitasking, I couldn't focus on any one customer at a time. And customers will respond over here and say, I was just very frustrated because I didn't feel like I had the team's attention. I did get a lot of defects. And they'll also say, I didn't feel like the team saw the big picture of where I was going. With this one, the customer will say, well, I felt like it was fair, but quite frankly, I still had to keep waiting until everyone else got their project done, and it took a long time just to get the whole thing done. The team normally feels over here that there was more stability in their multitasking. But with this scenario over here, the reason customers or companies don't do it this way is because they feel the fear of not working on all these other 3 projects. Because working on all projects at the same time gives us this false illusion of making progress. Yet when we actually look at it, this was quicker time to market because Sarah actually now has her project done and she can begin to use it. Carrie has his project done in 12 seconds, which beat any of the other records. So when you think about it, we have our top 3 projects over here, 6, 12, and 17 seconds being done and probably beating or meeting the top deliverable timeline, cycle time for any of the other ones. So this is a good exercise to reflect on in terms of going with a vertical backlog. Multitasking projects is the #1 killer of your organizational's ability to deliver value effectively. And that's something that the PMO and Agile PMO really focuses on and understands, and probably plays that game that I just showed you with everyone in the organization, and especially the executive team, so they begin to understand the value of having a vertical backlog. So allocating projects beyond capacity is a big problem that we're dealing with, and it is really the #1 killer for why things are not being done efficiently and effectively. And we're sometimes asking the wrong question. For example, which resources are available instead of which team is ready to pull this project into their backlog? How can I have the enterprise view of my resource instead of how can I have an enterprise view of my teams? What is our enterprise resource capacity in terms of hours instead of what is my enterprise velocity per quarter? How many deliverables or points is each team getting done, and how can I get an overall view of the value that these teams are delivering per quarter? So as you can see, and I know probably some of these questions seem a little bit different or confusing if you don't have a background in Agile, but one of the things I was just talking to Darlene about is we could definitely create a series to help give you some of this foundation of what is a point and why do we create these teams this way. But the concept is we're starting to move towards focusing on teams and allocating teams and measuring teams as opposed to individuals. So this is really what I wanted to show you, is that to start addressing a lot of these issues within the waste issues, it's not just one silver bullet. And I'm here to tell you it's not just Agile. Agile will help you on a process transformation perspective. Agile and Scrum, they'll help you a lot with getting projects on track, focusing on delivering value, helping teams actually focus as opposed to be multitasking. Lean and Kanban are going to help you tremendously on your portfolio management strategy to really start creating that vertical portfolio to allow the teams to actually pull from the portfolio as opposed to being pushed towards getting all these projects done. And Kanban could also help you at the team level in terms of optimizing what's actually happening and some of the bottlenecks and being able to understand it. Improving engineering practices, improving requirements gathering, these are all areas that you need to focus on to transform the process. But most importantly, and I think what also is missed in a lot of organizations that are moving towards Agile, is the people side of the transformation. That you're actually going to need to create individuals with effective facilitation skills. Change the leadership style from command and control to servant leadership, to empowering these teams that we are talking about now. Beginning to build and create and empower those stable service teams, which is those cross-functional teams that are really there to create value. And then, of course, the first thing you're going to run into when you create the cross-functional teams is they're not going to know how to collaborate with each other because they're not used to working with each other this way. They're used to working with their own type of team. And so collaboration skills, those are all the tools for building high-performing teams. And I think that taking a holistic view at it as a team member, as the PMO, is really important so that you're not just fixing one area versus the other. So I was going to walk you real quickly through the life cycle of a portfolio. How do we come up from an idea all the way to actually delivering value? So ideas are qualified, and that would happen in any kind of project, whether it's an Agile project or a non-Agile project. It goes through idea qualification, where we pick our top ideas, we move them to be initiated, and that really creates our portfolio of projects, so we prioritize them and pick the top projects that do need to be worked on for this year. And then we can do some program level planning, which is the same thing in Agile, right? I would take these projects, which are in orange, and begin to break them down in what we call themes. So from a requirements perspective, Agile works on themes, features, stories, and that's sort of the levels of requirements. And so we're now breaking them down into themes and features, deciding which priority they need to be worked on, and maybe beginning to group them by Team A and Team B. Now realize that Team A is a cross-functional team that's capable of getting all these requirements all the way done, and Team B is also the same, but just focused on a different area. So Team A is not the group of developers, and Team B is not a group of testers, for example. Those are actual execution project teams. We then take our features and break them down into stories, right? And then create a release plan where these stories are actually scheduled into what we call time-boxed iterations, right? So a time-boxed iteration in Agile means that it's between 1 to 4 weeks the team has to deliver a value. So it could be 2 weeks, every 2-week cycle, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, but usually you stay within the 4-week, and those are exactly the same. So once you decide on, for example, 2-week sprints or 2-week iterations, you stick with that, and that's where these stories are sliced into. And I want to show you an example of a release plan. So this is a sample team backlog here, or a team workbook. It's just in Excel right now because I just wanted to show you an example of it. And the team has a backlog, and the backlog is basically, here's my web portal site. So this is the theme, and under that theme we have a security feature, and under that feature I have customer login. As a customer, I want to register for a new account. As a customer, I want to retrieve my forgotten password. As a customer, I want to add a password. So these are what we call our backlog of requirements and stories that we have broken down. And a release plan is basically nothing more than taking these stories and slicing them by iteration. So our very first iterations normally are iteration 0, the setup iteration. This is the begin date for it. This is the end date. And here's some of the stories that we have sliced to get done. Our target was to get these stories done. Unfortunately, when it all got said and done, one of the stories did not get done. And that's why the team got 10 points completed out of 18 points. If this all sounds completely new to you, please forgive me because it's beyond the scope of this 1 hour to go into the details of all of this, but I did want to show you samples of what a release plan would look like, and I'm happy to send you this as an example workbook that you can take a look at. But Agile focuses on measuring teams' velocity, which is how many points are they actually getting done from one iteration to another, by measuring what they actually targeted to get done, what they really are getting done, and you can even measure cost at the iteration level or cumulatively. So this is an example of a release plan, and you could design this release plan and begin to track it all the way until you actually move to production if you have a hard date. And some teams don't have a hard date, they release after every iteration. So that's basically taking us through this life cycle and seeing what a release plan looks like. Then I wanted to share with you what the actual value statements are that drive your Agile organization. You've probably seen these before if you're familiar with Agile. Individuals and collaboration between people over processes and tools. The only way we measure progress is from working software, or how I normally refer to it is a business deliverable. So whether it's software or not, because we have been doing Agile and Agile's been used for non-software projects for many years now, but a business deliverable, a valuable business deliverable over just the documentation on that deliverable. Customers should collaborate with the team in Agile as opposed to only negotiate the contract and talk about end dates and deliverables and scope changes. They should actually become part of the team and collaborate to provide feedback. And of course, responding to change over following a plan. And what this means is that we know we need to have a plan. And of course we have a plan. We actually plan at 6 different levels on Agile. We plan at the strategic level, at the portfolio, at the release level, the roadmap level, at the iteration level, at the daily level. We have several times where we plan continuously. But what's more important than the plan is your ability to respond to the changes that's happening on the ground and still meet the customer's objectives. So while there is value to the items on the right over here, Agile teams value the items on the left more because we believe that these are what we call management controls, and we need just enough management controls to deliver value, which is what's on the left. Lean development is something you should be familiar with as an Agile PMO, because Lean gives you the heart of Lean portfolio management, and there's some really awesome books on this, and I highly recommend. Mary Poppendieck and Tom Poppendieck really created and started the whole Lean development movement with this awesome book over here. Alan Shalloway has a great book on Lean and Agile software development, specifically focused on portfolio management also. And Dean Leffingwood does amazing work over here on this area in terms of scaling Agile to the enterprise. So these are 3 books that you can take a look at if you're interested in learning more. But I wanted to share with you some of the principles from Lean, which is looking at the big picture, optimizing it, eliminating some of the wasteful things that we've been talking about so far, and building quality in as we go instead of looking for quality at the end and finding defects. We're just going to clean things up as we go. We're not going to wait until the final testing phase to identify quality issues, and several other principles. So what does an Agile team look like? An Agile team has a product owner, and the product owner is one person from the customer representing the business vision and who can answer the question of what is it that we're working on and why should we do it. So when I'm sort of evaluating the health of an Agile team, I really look for this leadership triangle. I look for these individuals to see, are they available? Are they helping? Are they supporting? Is there someone from the business that's really guiding the vision of this team? Is there a process facilitator? We normally refer to them as a scrum master. is that person available, and hopefully they're facilitating a healthy Agile process as opposed to commanding, controlling, directing, and assigning tasks to the team. That would be a different way of leadership. The Agile way of leadership, and of course this anyone in this triangle is a leader, a servant leader, is to serve the team by removing impediments, being there to support them, empowering them, bringing out the best of their ideas as opposed to commanding and controlling these teams. So that's why servant leadership has become very, very popular as a leadership methodology for organizations moving to Agile. So we've got the Scrum Master, again, consider him the process facilitator who makes sure the process is really healthy. And then we've got someone who has to have the technical vision of how we're going to get this done. Now, it doesn't have to be one person. There's a lot of teams where they'll have a database architect, and they'll have an enterprise architect and possibly even a solution architect. It doesn't matter. You might have one or several. All I'm trying to show in this diagram is someone in this team, and they are of course part of the team, needs to have the technical vision for how we're going to get this done at a high level. So sometimes it is the enterprise architect, and sometimes it could just be a team lead who could really help answer questions and mentor others. And so, of course, you have the team here that are cross-functional, sometimes a database analyst, a developer, a tester, a customer user, an actual business user, and various other roles. A BA, a business analyst, could also be part of the team. This team is focused completely on that release plan that I just showed you. They are working iteration after iteration after iteration to deliver value. And they want to deliver value in a highly prioritized top-down way. They don't want to know that everything is high, because every requirement being high doesn't mean anything to them, because I can't work on all of them at the same time. I basically need the product owner to take care of prioritizing this backlog, just top-down, order it almost, sequence it, keeping in mind business value and dependency so this team can actually provide value. And this team begins to measure their velocity. How many points are they getting done within every iteration, right? Going with this approach then, let's take a look at what a program would look like. A program is a multi-team approach. Well, you just take those same exact teams we've been talking about, but you realize now that you actually have a program backlog. So the program backlog might be at a higher level. Instead of being at the story level, which is what the team normally execute at, the program backlog might be more at the feature level, right? They're like features are basically epics. They're things that are a little bit bigger. For example, sales reports. Sales reports is a feature. If I broke that down, I'd break it down into the actual sales reports that I need. So as a sales rep, I want to view the sales by month report. That's an actual story, and maybe even still too big for a team to get done and still needs to be broken down at the team level. But what we're tracking over here at the program are probably the dependencies between the various teams and creating a team that can actually get their part of the backlog done. The way we did this before is this would be a team of developers, analysts, testers, DBAs, and every requirement would have to go through each one of these teams to get to done, and that's called waterfall. The Agile way is that you would give every team a complete backlog, a function, a component, something that they could focus on completing beginning to end, and then you would have this program management team, program leadership team that would take care of meeting very frequently. These teams meet every day. Your program team would meet maybe 2-3 times per week, if not every day as well. And what they're focused on is what are the dependencies between these teams? What impediments are these teams facing? What can I do to remove impediments from these teams and add value to them and support them in what they're doing? Is the scope changing between any of these backlogs? That's where the sponsor is coming in, right? How are the facilitators doing? Is there anything that they need to support them? And so you definitely want this scrum of scrum teams. Sometimes it's referred to that way. And I know that's a funny terminology, right? Scrum of scrums. Basically, this team really wants to help and support the other actual sub-teams, and you usually want that team to be members of these teams. So you don't want to have this leadership team that doesn't know anything about what's going on getting together and representing the Scrum of Scrum. You actually want various team members, the product owner, the Scrum Master, a technical lead, a DBA, a database, or a tester, being part of the program leadership team or the Scrum of Scrum team so they can see and talk about real-world issues that are actually happening on the ground. So now let's scale this to one level above, just to add complexity to this picture. Imagine that from a top-down perspective at the portfolio, you have multiple projects and multiple programs that are executing. And maybe you are collecting all of those at the portfolio level. You could be a large organization. I work for several Fortune 500s, right? And they would organize their by portfolios, basically. I have this group portfolio, I have an individual portfolio, I have maybe this consumer mortgage loan portfolio, I have the commercial portfolio, and under each portfolio, here's the programs and projects that are executing. And you might be a small enough organization where you just have one portfolio, which is the enterprise portfolio, and these are the various programs and projects that are executing underneath it. So now this is where you see the PMO's role really coming in. How can I begin to create this vertical portfolio at the enterprise level or at the portfolio level? How can I, and of course the items that will be on this portfolio will be a little bit bigger than a feature. They'll probably be at the theme or initiative or project level because we're tracking them now at a higher level. And the goal over here is to create this funnel, this almost like a stacked deck, right, top down. People and these teams and these programs can only pull from the top. That's what we mean over here, pull from the top of the backlog. So you guys work on making sure that this is really prioritized top down, just like in that name game. And we want to begin to pull from the very top, and the team that is available to work on that initiative or that project or those enhancements will pull it down to their team so they can begin to work at it. This is almost, and this is actually called by Dean Leffingward, something called the release train. You can also think of it also as this production line. So the production line moves very smoothly and effectively when the team can pull based on its capacity of what it has available. What we do today is we'll just take those first 10, 15 projects and push them and allocate all the resources at the bottom to work on these 10, 15 projects. So that's what we talk about. That's what we mean by a push versus a pull method. A pull method is where the team is actually pulling from the top of the backlog at the enterprise portfolio level. So let's take a look now at this grand picture over here, which is the Scaled Agile Delivery Model by Dean Leffingward. Again, I showed you as an example of his book, where he shows something very similar to what I've been using. I've been using that picture for a while, and this is basically a multi-layer, same exact thing. Here's my Agile teams. They're working on getting stories done, right, at the team level. This is my product managers and release management team, and they've got the roadmap and the vision for what the actual product should do, and they're working more at the program level. And this is my strategic portfolio steering committee and portfolio managers, and they're looking at the overall business value strategic objectives and hopefully driving everything below it. As you can see in this picture, everything's being driven top down. So very similar to what I just showed you, but I think it's a more holistic view. So now let's talk. What is your role in all of this? Sort of, I had to give you the very, very quick view of, what ideal Agile state looks like, and I know you're probably far from it right now or maybe moving towards it, which would be awesome. But here's the role of the PMO. 1, you have to limit project multitasking, which is work in progress, because it's been just killing the teams, and it's killing our effectiveness and efficiency. So creating these vertically prioritized, ordered portfolio backlog becomes your main concern. How can I take all of the work that's happening and really organize it so that it's really happening based on value delivered to the organization? And how can I help the teams pull from this backlog as opposed to me pushing several projects and not actually getting any of them done efficiently? And again, remember the name game, right? So go back to that name game. If you're still not convinced that this is a more efficient way, you'll have to just trust me for right now, play the name game, and then of course I can share with you in other webinars statistics for why this works so much better than what we're doing today. Go ahead and please focus on idea qualification and project initiation. I always say if you don't know what the source of the problem is, you can't fix it. So if you don't know where all of these projects are coming from, if projects are coming in randomly through so many different entry gates, then it's going to be very hard to qualify them, limit them, and kill the ones that are not really providing value. So this is extremely important. I actually have an entire webinar that I've recorded, and at the very last slide, I think it's the last slide or the second to last slide, I have a link to where you can go and listen to that webinar. It is available for you to listen to. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in this topic, to listen to the Agile Idea Qualification Project Initiation webinar as well. Then, number 2, your focus. Build and support stable cross-functional teams. Think of this number 1, which is limiting work project multitasking. I just call that urgent. That's like tactical, this is killing us now, what can you do to help with this one? Number 2 is, once you begin to create these teams, even if they're not completely stable teams yet, you're at least just piloting Agile, you're getting started, please let them focus on getting something done. Limit the resource shifting and multitasking. Track and remove organizational impediments. That should be like one of your top priorities. Instead of just requiring teams to write more documentation and provide metrics and reports, I really look for the PMO to engage with the teams and answer the question of, where are these teams stuck and what are you doing about them? What are you helping to remove from an organizational perspective? Some teams can't get work done because there's so many red tape and barriers. Servers are not available. Data is not available. Resources keep getting shifted on and off. For them to ask for anything from another team takes forever to get anything done. Different departments require so much heavy documentation that they're not even able to code or figure out how to get anything done. If teams are being slowed down tremendously because of all these issues, where's the PMO office? This is where I really want the PMO offices to focus on identifying, tracking, and completely addressing and removing these organizational impediments. That is something that I actually think should be part of the measurement of the effectiveness of an Agile PMO, is how many impediments have you removed for teams lately to help them deliver value? Educate the team and get their buy-in. A lot of organizations that are moving to Agile are sort of sometimes just doing it top-down. We will go Agile whether you like it or not. That's not really a very Agile thing to do. You do want to educate people on their role. You do want to help answer their question and help them get their buy-in into whether this is the way to go. Of course, it might be strategically the way you're going anyway, but just give them the benefit of being educated, trained, so they can answer, get their questions answered. I have worked with a lot of teams that we've not had the luxury of training them. We've just sort of, jumped in there by fire to recover projects maybe that were not doing well. And I can't tell you how much longer it takes to get their buy-in and how much rework it takes for us. It actually just causes a lot of churn. So education, being a center for education and getting buy-in and helping people understand all this is very important. And then empower and support high-performing self-organizing teams. What I mean by this is, remember that Agile is all about empowering people, empowering teams, allowing them to deliver value as opposed to this command and control way that we've been doing it before. So you being educated on this as the PMO office and knowing how to educate and push that down throughout the organization, helping change the leadership style, because you'll find that a lot of managers and a lot of directors and a lot of line managers may still not understand how to transition to this kind of leadership style. And it's not that they want to be command and control. It's that's the way things have been done before. That is just the norm. That's what we expected will deliver value. So it is very important and critical to begin this education process. Number 3, for you to be a valuable PMO, an Agile PMO, support the organization's holistic transformation to Agile. How do you do that? Well, first of all, you can set up an Agile transition team. Some people call it the Agile initiative team. Some people call it the Agile transformation team. Some people call it the Agile stakeholder. Some people call it the value delivery team. Basically, this is a bunch of individuals from different departments, hopefully also leaders and managers, that are coming together to say, you know what, we got to work together better. We have to look at this picture holistically, and for us to be able to drive Agile through our organization, we're going to have to start looking beyond the functional boundaries and silos and looking at this holistic picture of value delivery. So, how are we going to roll out Agile? What are we going to pilot? Which teams should we start with first? How do we prioritize our own backlog for process improvement and Agile transformation? And that's exactly what happens, is this little initiative team begins to create a backlog of what are you going to do Who's going to do it? Can you actually work in iterations yourselves, like for example monthly iterations, and focus on 1 or 2 or 3 things at a time and actually deliver value from them based on your capacity? So that's where you could really get started with seeing some traction. Invest in process and people transformation education. So yes, I'm not going to hide this. We are agiletraining.com. But our goal is that if you are really trying to transform this organization, you have to understand all the various process skills and people skills that are going to be needed to transform. It doesn't just happen because you say, let's go agile. Organization doesn't just transform that way. And you need some intensive education, whether it's internal or externally supported, but you do need to know that this is a big reason for why agile transformations have failed, is the lack of education, the lack of investment in that, sort of the go agile, it's going to work, and no foundation setting for helping the roles understand how they will fit within the new picture. The make it stick plan is what I call it. Make it stick means that you need to establish that overall process guidance, right? End-to-end process guidance. What does this really look like? But not make it so prescriptive that teams cannot come up with their own internal ways of wanting to get something done. So of course we need some standards across how are we going to measure these teams, right? What do we expect to see? How does this whole thing flow from one layer to the other layer, right? What is our expectations and outputs of each team? But also within that, the team need to be self-organizing and be able to, example, change their task wall the way that they want to, as opposed to you prescribing, and this is the way all task boards will look like here and in the future. You don't want to go down to that level. You want to give them a framework that they can succeed within that also gives you that enterprise standard that you're looking for. And then lastly, gather just enough metrics that actually help communicate the overall picture, confirm delivery of strategic value, and support the service teams. So metrics is a big thing for PMO offices, and I know. Here's the thing to consider from an Agile perspective. The metrics that you are asking for need to drive value. They can't be metrics for the sake of gathering them, and they can't be so heavy that teams are spending so much time doing additional work just to get the metrics to someone who's going to read them in a report, but not necessarily actually do anything with those metrics. So Agile actually provides a lot of new, refreshing, and in my opinion, very valuable way to measure the team's performance in terms of what are they getting done? How many story points has this team got done in this iteration? How much business value? And you can even, if you listen to the idea qualification webinar, you'll see we talk about business value points. How can I even quantify, in a way, business value so I can begin to track it? So there's a lot of, there's EVM, right, earned value management, what value has come from this versus the cost. So make sure you're tracking the right things and you're doing it in a lightweight fashion so the teams can actually operate and move forward effectively and efficiently. One thing I didn't mention on this Make It Stick is in addition to the establishing process guidance, you're also going to initiate communities of excellence or communities of practice, like this one here. A community of practice is a group of individuals or teams that are really looking to improve a specific area. And that's what looks closer to your functional teams that you've had before. And let me show you that. So what you've had before are these functional teams, developers, testers, BAs, analysts, that all look like each other, do the same thing. That's really what we have now as communities of practice or communities of excellence. So they don't go away. It's not like, I don't want you to think, oh boy, we're going to take all these people, put them together, co-locate them, make them this cross-functional team. They'll never come back and be a developer team again, or the testers are never going to come back together. If you do that, if you go from one extreme of having extremely functional silos into the other extreme of having 100% dedicated service teams that never come back to their communities, you're basically just, swinging the pendulum all the way to the other extreme. You're going to have a lot of quality issues because of the lack of consistency and standards between how the teams get work done. So what you should do differently, though, is, yes, focus on the service teams, and of course let them allocate their time 70-80% to actually get work done on the projects, but every individual still needs to allocate 15-20% of their time to go back to their community of practice. What does a community do for you? Well, that's where the standards and best practices are talked about. Knowledge sharing, pairing with other people, coaching and mentoring each other, actual skill development, tools, technology choices for that specific community or area, process improvements within that specific area, and innovation, taking that area to the next level. Think of this almost like a process improvement focused community. So that's what the developers get together to talk about. What are our standards? What are the best way? What are some reusable code that we can use? Testers get together to talk about automation best practices. What tools should we use? How can we integrate with everyone else's? And examples of communities that you could begin to see in a healthy, mature, agile type organization: an agile coaching community. This is where everyone, all the scrum masters and agile coaches belong to this community, and they help coach and breed additional teams and stabilize them. You can see a project management community of excellence, right? This is where it's focused on taking what we're talking about now and all the agile project management principles and really taking it across the organization, across all teams, and helping support them one team at a time. Enterprise requirements. We actually just did this. We started an enterprise requirements gathering community of practice at one of my clients, and the goal is to take some of the best practices that we've learned through the workshops and take it across every single team through the enterprise and make it stick. Product owner community of practice, focused on educating the business owners, the business customers, on their new role, on creating stories, on understanding what acceptance criteria means, on identifying business value and doing the right way, the right initiation up front. Engineering practices, this is where coding, standards, best practices, test-driven development, continuous integration, all of these are educated by this community. Testing, of course, and automation, all is the focus of this community. And then release management is the focus of the release management community. And this is just a quick example. I think we've already talked about this, but just to show you that when teams are getting work done, every iteration, they're getting points done. We call that velocity. And the beauty of velocity is you can now take their average. So I would know that my backlog has 48 points to get done, and my average velocity, based on what the teams are getting done, is about 12 points. So this tells me, it's probably going to take 4 or 5 iterations to get this work done. And of course, you always want to pad or put some buffering. And so even though if you just divide the 48 by 12, you'll probably have 4 iterations, but you added one more iteration as a buffer, which that's my general rule of thumb, is after every 4 to 5 iterations, I have one iteration that's, I call it a lightweight fall-through iteration. There are different other techniques for buffering, but that just kind of shows you what velocity means and how a team now can begin to, every time they get stories done in every iteration, begin to measure their velocity. Here's another example of a chart, and this chart's actually coming from this Excel sheet. Let me show it back to you again. So on that same Excel sheet, we can take a look and see, oh, this is the blue line. This is what the teams targeted to get done. This is what they thought they were going to get done. The pink line is what the team actually got done. And you remember seeing that over here, for example, iteration 1. Let's go back and look at our release plan. You can see that in iteration 1, the team targeted to get 33 points done, but they only got 28 points done, and that's what this burn-up chart is showing you. The beauty also of this burn-up chart is when you can look at the line above. This line over here is the scope line. When this project first started, it had 58 points, and ooh, look, iteration 2, we moved up to 63 points. I wonder how that happened. Let's take a look down over here. Oh, look, iteration 2. Customer added customer views, product reviews. It's a 5-pointer. That was additional scope. Looks like the team went ahead and agreed to get it done within this iteration. It was within their capacity. And it must have also been added to our backlog here. And yep, sure did. If you can see right over here, customer views, product reviews was added, and the story was added during iteration 2. So this just gives us a very quick way to track scope changes and track actual work being done. So when we say we're 83% done on an Agile project, it's 80 actual 3% done of the backlog. So 83% done means that 83% of the total number of points that we committed to getting done are actually done. And done means all the way done, actually tested by the customer and accepted by them. A comparison chart right over here that goes right along with this one is the cost burn-up chart. So we were funded originally for $450,000. Ooh, look, it looks like in iteration 2 we got funded for up to $550,000. The green line is what we predicted our burn rate would be, and the red line is what it actually is. Another way to look at this is a wonderful chart by my colleague Mike Griffiths, leadinganswers.com, and he's got an EVM, an earned value burn-up chart, where he combines both of those in one picture. And of course you can download this presentation at the end from my link, so you can take a look at all of it. And this is another just example of, if I had multiple teams, how I can begin to, for every team, this is my start, my target, actual, how many impediments, and this is the total points at that point, and I can look at it from a program perspective to say, holistically, between all these three teams, we targeted to get 21 points done, we only actually got 3 points done, and our total scope right now is at 1760, and it can show me how that's progressing from one iteration to another. And of course I could easily now create a burn-up chart at the program level. This is another example of tracking. So the kind of metrics that you would want to keep track of is impediments. So how many impediments does this team go through in every iteration? How many impediments did they track and log? And these are usually impediments that took them more than a day or two to actually get resolved. I mean, just onesie-twosie impediments that get removed pretty quickly. Those are not high priority, obviously, for you to have to take a look at. But if the team's getting stuck with an impediment for 3, 4, 5 days and not able to move forward, that's a problem. And I really think the PM office should be looking at these and finding some common trends of impediments. So that brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. I know that I've covered a lot of information over here, and I do apologize that I couldn't give you as much of an intro to Agile as I would like to, but I'm hoping we can do that in future webinars. If you are interested in learning about the new Project Management Agile Certified Practitioner exam or certification, if you're interested just to know what's that about, I was part of the review committee for creating the certification, would be happy to share with you. PMI.org/Agile is your #1 source for that. I did create a pretty detailed blog with some exam tips. You can join this LinkedIn community and find out a little bit more. And do get engaged with this community and get informed. Of course, you can download this presentation. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I also put a couple of the cheat sheets in there. You can email me if you're also looking for that workbook. I'm Sally@agiletraining.com, and the tinyurl.com/agiletraining. The IDEA qualification webinar that I mentioned, this is the link to get to it. And if you're looking for that PMI study group, that's a way to get to it. Please do connect to me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I will just take a look real quickly to see if you guys have questions for me.